The first thing that caught my attention was the knock. A sharp, almost surgical rap against my front door. It was one of those late spring afternoons where the sunlight hit perfectly, turning the entire neighborhood into something straight out of a postcard. Birds chirped obnoxiously in the background, and somewhere down the street, a lawn mower growled to life. But all I could hear was that knock. I opened the door to see Mrs. Hargrove HOA's resident storm cloud perched on my porch with an expression that made it feel like I'd personally insulted her entire family tree. Her eyes narrowed as if she were zooming in with binoculars, scanning me from head to toe. "You changed your Wi-Fi," she stated flatly, as if this single revelation explained all the wrongs in the world. I blinked. Yes," I mumbled. "Without permission," she barked. "You can't just go around making technological alterations in your home." She paused, dramatically, like she'd been rehearsing this line for weeks. "A safety violation," I stared. "Safety violation? My Wi-Fi?" This was the kind of overreaction you'd expect in a bad sci-fi flick where appliances revolt. I'd literally just changed the name and password. Nobody got hurt. "It's literally just the Wi-Fi," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. But sarcasm was slipping through. "Well, calling the authorities," she snapped, pivoting sharply, her movements precise and theatrical. Just like that, she marched down the path, her heels clicking like a drumroll to my inevitable doom. I laughed nervously, telling myself she'd probably calm down before anyone actually showed up. But minutes passed, and the quiet hum of my router was suddenly drowned out by the wail of sirens. Police cruisers pulled up, lights bouncing off freshly mowed lawns in the tidy suburban street. I opened the door again, raising my hands in protest even before they stepped out. "I promise, officers, it's just Wi-Fi. She's overreacting." One officer squinted at my setup. "Ma'am, are these devices yours?" he asked, pointing to a cluster of black boxes and cables snaking behind the entertainment center like some chaotic urban jungle. I nodded. "Yeah, routers, switches, just my home network." The officers exchanged a look, and suddenly the air shifted. Tension replaced the casual disbelief in the room. "What is all this?" the second officer asked, and in that moment, I realized Mrs. Hargrove's petty complaint had somehow unearthed something far bigger than my innocent network upgrade. The officers stepped inside cautiously, their boots making soft thuds on the polished hardwood. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, giving the scene a cinematic glow, but nothing about it felt glamorous. I tried to explain again, heart racing. "It's all personal, just Wi-Fi, smart devices." I trailed off, aware of how absurd I must sound. A tall officer crouched to inspect the wiring, tracing a finger along the tangle of black cables. He squinted at the labels I'd meticulously placed on each device. "Ma'am, these aren't standard routers," he muttered to himself. "Some of this equipment, it's industrial grade." "What exactly are you doing here?" I laughed nervously. "Industrial grade? No, it's just..." "Okay," I admitted. "I like my network fast, stable, secure." "Secure for whom?" His tone had shifted, curiosity creeping into his official cadence. He straightened and gestured toward a small server rack tucked into the corner. "This is not typical home networking equipment." My heart thumped. I'd bought some for remote work, some for hobbies, some for home automation and small-scale cloud storage. Never had I imagined it would look like some secret operation. Before I could explain, the other officer's phone buzzed. He glanced down, brow furrowed. "Dispatch says Mrs. Hargrove reported a suspicious network setup. I think you may have inadvertently triggered a federal alert." I blinked. "A what?" "They think this might be used for something illegal," the first officer said, eyes fixed on the blinking lights like the devices themselves were alive. "Plotting. We need to secure the area while we verify your claims." My voice cracked. "I swear, it's just my Wi-Fi. I'm not doing anything illegal." Meanwhile, Mrs. Hargrove's voice echoed faintly from the porch, shouting over sirens and commands. I told you. He's hiding something." She sounded like a villain from a low-budget thriller, utterly convinced she was saving the neighborhood from disaster. I sank into the couch, staring at the blinking routers, my heart racing. One officer turned to me, expression grim. "Ma'am, we need you to step back. This could be serious." And in that instant, it hit me. What began as a trivial HOA complaint had spiraled far beyond anything I could have imagined. The first officer picked up a device, tapped a few buttons, and froze. "Ma'am, you need to see this." The officer's eyes never left the screen as he swiped through lines of code, device logs, and connection histories. Suddenly, the room felt impossibly small. The hum of my routers was deafening in my ears, and even the sunlight seemed sharper, slicing across the floor like it was spotlighting a crime scene. "Ma'am, have you ever noticed strange devices in your neighborhood? Or anyone asking to access your network?" he asked. His voice was calm, but there was a sharp edge that made my chest tighten. I've noticed nothing like that," I said, trying to steady my voice. "I live a quiet life. This is all just for work and a little tech hobby." His partner leaned in, tapping a few more keys. "Look at this. Some of your traffic unintentional assume is pinging a server in Eastern Europe, highly encrypted, and these logs show automated activity, almost like a bot network." I laughed nervously, shaking my head. "Oh my God, that's just my smart home system. It updates firmware, checks security patches. Nothing illegal, I promise." The officers exchanged another look, one of those looks that said, "We've seen enough to know we don't know the whole story. We're going to need a full inventory of your devices, all your network logs, and access to your passwords," the first officer said. His tone wasn't accusatory, it was careful, like handling explosives. My stomach sank. This was way beyond a petty HOA dispute about Wi-Fi names. I could feel the tension pressing on my chest, tightening my throat, freezing my words, and then it happened. Mrs. Hargrove appeared at the window, leaning on the sill with a triumphant smirk. "See, I told you something wasn't right. You should have listened to me." I opened my mouth to yell, to tell her she had no idea what she'd done, but the officer's hand on my shoulder stopped me. "Ma'am, step back, please. This isn't about the HOA anymore. We need to verify what's actually on your network before anyone jumps to conclusions." I took a shaky step back, heart hammering. My life, quiet, predictable, uneventful just an hour ago, now felt like a thriller where I didn't know the ending. And then, one of the devices blinked wildly. Red lights flashed like warning beacons. The officer froze, staring at the monitor. "Ma'am, you might want to sit down for this," he said, voice low. "What we just discovered, it's not just your Wi-Fi, it's much bigger." I sank onto the couch, heart racing, as the officers gathered around my network console. The red lights blinked faster, almost alive, signaling urgency. The air felt thick, charged, like static before a storm. The taller officer finally turned to me, expression grave. "Ma'am, we traced your network activity. It's been acting as a relay point for a massive botnet. We believe someone installed parts of it without your knowledge." I blinked, disbelief mixing with panic. "Wait, I didn't do that. I literally just changed the Wi-Fi name yesterday." "I know," he said gently. "We're not accusing you of any crime. But whoever set this up must have had access to your equipment, maybe through outdated software, default passwords. You've been unknowingly hosting it." My hands shook. The mundane argument with Mrs. Hargrove, the petty HOA drama, had led to this surreal moment. Flashing police lights. My innocent home network flagged in a potential international cyber investigation. Meanwhile, Mrs. Hargrove was still at the window, raving into her phone like she'd just won a Pulitzer. "I knew it. I told them I saved the neighborhood," she shouted, oblivious to the chaos her vendetta had caused. The officers tried to calm her, but she was beyond reason. I could only stare in disbelief. One moment, my biggest crime was making my Wi-Fi slightly inconvenient for her. Next, she triggered a full-blown investigation. The tall officer sighed. "We're going to need to secure your network, update all firmware, ensure nothing else is compromised, and maybe have a chat with your HOA about boundaries." I laughed nervously, a mix of relief and lingering terror. Boundaries? Yeah, that's putting it lightly. As they disconnected equipment, scanned logs, and documented everything, I realized something. Mrs. Hargrove had been vindicated in her own mind, but in reality, her obsession exposed a problem it didn't even know existed. If she hadn't called 911, who knows how long I'd have been unknowingly hosting a cyber mess. By the time the officers left, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the neighborhood. My home felt quiet again, almost too quiet. Mrs. Hargrove was back on her porch, holding court with anyone who would listen, blissfully unaware or perhaps fully aware of the chaos she'd caused. I leaned back, exhausted, staring at my now tamed rooters. Just Wi-Fi, I reminded myself. Just Wi-Fi. And yet, my life had never been more unpredictable. As the streetlights flickered on, I whispered to no one in particular, maybe next time, I'll just let her rename my Wi-Fi herself.